life is going forward, not backwards. Right. So you're not going, like, you can dwell on your past. You can think about anything from the past, right? Like that, but that doesn't, there's no cheese down that tunnel, right? Like there really is today. Okay. There really is today. There really only ever is today. Okay. And then the way you dream, what you want in your life for the future should be dictating what you do today.
That is Lauren Handel Zander, today's guest. She has over 25 years experience in life coaching and consulting, working with high-profile clients such as Hugh Jackman, Questlove, and Fortune 500 companies like Live Nation. Her framework, the Handel Method, is taught in over 35 universities and institutions around the world, including MIT, Stanford, and NYU. Lauren's also the creator of InnerYou.Coach, a place where you can, quote, learn to human better. And today, she is going to provide you with insights and frameworks for a variety of life challenges that we all face, including giving you some tools for navigating difficult life transitions, how to toe that line between contentment and reaching for the stars when you're setting goals, why you have to hear your lower self to be your higher self, some awesome advice that I found super helpful around how to get unstuck, how you can go from I don't know what to do mode to taking immediate action. The difference between manifesting and what she calls fucking yourself, and a warning, you might come out of this episode with a, quote, screaming promise that you're going to want to keep to yourself, and you might want to be on the lookout for that, and you'll know what to do with it because Lauren will fill you in. All of that and much more happening in this episode. You don't want to miss this one. Plus, I'm going to give a shout out to a listener who is taking the travel momentum from her honeymoon and turning it into something much more. This is a story that really reminded me about one of the top principles behind adding more travel into your life, which is what this show is all about. So you're going to get that in today's episode. Here we go. Buckle up, strap in. Thanks for being here, and welcome to the Zero to Travel podcast, my friend.
You're listening to the Zero to Travel podcast, where we explore exciting travel-based work, lifestyle, and business opportunities, helping you to achieve your wildest travel dreams. And now your host, world wanderer and travel junkie, Jason Moore.
Hey, it's Jason here with ZeroToTravel.com. Welcome to the show. Thanks for hanging out, letting me bring a little travel into your ears today. This is the show to help you travel the world on your terms, to fill your life with as much travel as you desire, no matter what your situation or experience. And I want to remind you, we have a newsletter as well, ZeroToTravel.com/newsletter. If you haven't signed up for it yet and joined the community over there, it goes out once a week, it's free. You can do that now. Let's get into this episode. Stick around for that shout out to a listener at the end. And I really enjoyed this conversation. Ton of value packed in this one, as you heard at the top. So without further ado, here's my conversation with Lauren. You can check out our work at InnerYou.Coach. That is INNERU, the letter U, .coach. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you on the other side, my friend. Cheers. Lauren Handel Zander, welcome to the Zero to Travel podcast, my friend. Nice to see you.
Thank you for having me. Hi.
Thanks for doing this. I was actually surprised when I saw you were in Croatia, because I just kind of assumed you were in the US. And I mean, this is a travel podcast, of course. I have to wonder, are you originally from the States? Like, how did you end up in Croatia?
The truth is, I was in the middle of a divorce, like after a 22-year marriage, 25 years with the same man. And then I sold him my house and really had nowhere to live, like nowhere in particular to live. And I was so disturbed, honestly, about how the United States has been doing. So the notion to like, this is your chance, bail, run, see the world, right? Like next 50, other side, right? Like get out of here. Anyway, so in every which way, I took off. And because I have never not had a digital business or been, on Zoom or what used to be Skype, right, was rocking and rolling back in the day. So I really had the ability to leave the US and see what would happen if I left. And so now it's like I'm over 2 years and I'm not going back.
All right. Well, first of all, very cool that you practice what you preach. You're listening to the inner voice, right? Like the inner voice is like, go, you got to bail, take your chance. You're like, all right, well, if I'm going to let people tap into their inner voice in that way,
Yes.
I'm going to roll with this.
Yes.
Let's unpack it a little bit before we get into someone. And I know, again, there's going to be a lot of actionable stuff here for listeners, but I need to hear a little bit more about this time in your life, because this is still relatively fresh, but I guess coming into your second year, I live abroad myself. So I remember like sort of there was like the newness factor, and then after you've been sort of through everything over a year or two, it's a little more established, I guess, if you want to say. It's less sort of like, wow, new travel experience, and more just like, this is my life now. Did you relocate and just stay in the same place? Were you traveling around? What did you do?
So I basically said I was looking for love and country.
Yeah, wow.
And that I was not desperate for either. And I would only travel to a place I would think I could stay for, like, because I was like dating around the world.
You were dating the world.
I was dating the world and finding out what would happen because I really did believe in, so love and country was what I was looking for. And the first place I hit was Switzerland. And the second place I hit was Croatia. So I was doing 90-day hopping. Right. So because as an American, your papers only last you 90 days, depending on in Schengen or out of Schengen. So I was like dealing with all the logistics of wanting to experience a country and a place and really just feel it and just know what the rest of the world was like. So it was really that. And then you're like, well, how come you got, like, Croatia was just number 2 on my list. I actually already had plans to leave, right? I had tickets, everything going to the Canary Islands, and realized I was really in love with the person I was dating and never left.
Wow.
I didn't get very far, everyone, right?
It sounds like a movie.
Oh, it really is a little, it, and I love where I am. Like, I love out. So I'm on the island of Korčula, and basically it's on the Adriatic Sea, and it's just stunning. And the economy here is amazing for an American salary. Like, it blows my mind that this place is actually still in the 50s, even though I was trained about money in New York, which literally is not, it's like, what? Everything is over $25, right? Like, so anyway, so coming here and then still taking care of my kids in college and managing money in a divorce, since I was the one who made the money, I had to really reconsider how I was going to do everything.
Okay. Had you traveled like this before? Was this like a big leap for you to just take off and go to another country like this? Or was it like, oh, I've done this before, I know what I'm getting myself into?
Never. When the last time I had done something this, like, just traveled, was I traveled alone. And trust me, everyone, I had a Walkman. I'm 54. So I had me a Walkman. I had the 5 tapes I picked. I had the backpack, and I traveled for about 2 months on my own when I was like a sophomore in college. And I loved it. I had a ball, like, finding out that the world worked no matter where I went. So that was the last time I had done something like that.
Was that something, oh, I wish I had done more of that type of thing, and now's my chance and I'm going to do it? Were those two experiences linked in some way?
No. So I can sit anywhere and make money is the truth, right? So that's... You're
location independent.
I really am. And I basically was so messed up from how it was the month I made the decision to like take off was when abortion was becoming illegal in the United States. And I was like, oh, America lost the plot, right? Like it's so wrong. And inflation and everything about it was not making me happy, right? It was like, do I have a choice? And then, I was done. I wanted to see what the rest of the world had to offer, really. And I wanted to feel global, not American anymore. Sorry, everyone who's American. I wanted to feel a different existence was possible.
Yeah. This is about being authentic and being honest. And no matter like people listening, everybody's different beliefs and things. I think the overarching idea is that like when you start to recognize that some of your values that you have as high values, high personal values don't necessarily align with the culture you're in or the country you're in. And you have the gift of a passport that allows you to move to other countries, because that's the other thing. Like if, it's like the discontent, but then also the U.S. passport gives us a lot of flexibility and that's a wonderful thing. So, but then you can obviously go to a different place and try to get to a place where the values are more aligned with who you are in the moment.
You're actually a lot nicer than I am. When you go the American passport, all I hear is, yeah, they're still collecting all my taxes, right? Oh yeah. It doesn't matter where I go.
Well, they are, but also to be fair, would be hard to get into, like some people can't go to these countries because they can't even get in. They can't get a visa because they don't have
That's
the
right.
right.
I really, yes, you're paying much more attention to it than I.
In that way, I guess. How is the lifestyle there? Like when you kind of compare the two and the way your daily life is now, how does the daily lifestyle, like, how has it changed for you? How does it feel to be there as like sort of just like an everyday kind of energetically?
I love it. It runs like a blue zone, if you know what I mean. So everyone here are farmers. They're really but they're not like farmers to sell their stuff to the world. They live off their own food, right? I'm like, you're like, Lauren, what'd you do this morning? I'm like, ooh, we were up early because we were picking olives. Like this is olive season right now. And so we'll be picking for the next 2 weeks. And I love doing something with purpose, right? And so the way the culture runs here is it's so everyone, we have lunch together. We work together, right? So and everyone on Sunday, on the entire country, everyone Sunday, everyone's having family lunch, right? If you're home alone, you're like, what's wrong with me? Right? Like I am not part of the culture. So it's very old school. Nothing's changed about families and taking care of the environment. And, I have like right to my left over here are my we're really recycling here. So my background is environmental studies and I got a BS in environmental studies, and they actually care about the environment they care because they're breathing it, eating it, managing it. And so there's something just so basic that's profound to me. And so living here feels like a much saner home than being in Manhattan, which used to feel very normal to me.
Right. It's like two different lives in some ways.
Mm-hmm.
How did you go from environmental sciences to life coaching, I guess you would call? Is that what you call yourself, a life coach?
I do call myself like OG life coach because I was coming up with the name of what I would call myself because there weren't any when I started, right? So I started when I was, or hardly any, when I was 28 years old, and I'm 54. So it's been some time. My line is, I had a very funny line. So, cause this all changed when I was 22, 23. I got a job at the United Nations Global Environment Facility. I was like living my dream, right? And then everyone was in little cubicles and no one was happy. And then you were like fighting people to do the right thing, in like to treat a tree right, to treat everything. Like there was so much pain. It was like going to be the longest fight ever. And in that moment, the more I was fighting the right fight for the environment, this is the critical part, the more I hated humans. Right? So it was like, I know, save the planet, kill the people. Right? Like that was my big, and I was like, Lauren, something's wrong with your logic, right? Like if the people could see the trees, everything would change. Like if the people, like it's the people, you're working on the wrong thing. And so when I was around 22, 23, I had a revelation that I really cared more about the humans than hating them. And so that was, my big end of my fangs hanging out about it. And then basically just started chasing down any company that was self-help, right? And that really was like, how do we change culture in the individual? And then that's when basically for the rest of my life, I devoted to what changes a human's perspective on life itself.
Yeah, amazing. So change through humanity. And yeah, like you said, I mean, I guess back then it wasn't as popular of a thing, but now you see a lot of life coaches. And so, yeah, I thought this would be a good opportunity as we're diving in to kind of get your take on what a life coach is exactly, and the distinction between when somebody might find this type of coaching useful versus, oh, they should go to a therapist, because it is like, in some ways there's crossover, but also maybe it's two different things. I don't know. You've been doing this for a long time, so I want to hear your experience. And why do life coaches get a bad rep?
Because it's like you signed up, you're a life coach, because people don't necessarily want the life of that life coach, right? It's like going to, someone to do your nails that bites their nails, right? No, right? Like, I don't know if you're the right one, right? So there really is a fair, who are you to tell me how to live my life, right? So I get that. And therapy is really important to get a person talking and understanding their makeup and how, they're putting things together. And I really cannot talk to is what therapy really is in comparison to what life coaching is. I do know the main difference is, as a life coach, I really do tell people what to do differently. Right? Like I really am helping them take actions very specifically and teaching people to have personal integrity is what I teach, which is the ability to keep a promise to yourself, not just to everybody else in the world. And I also teach about catching your inner dialogue and tracking it. And I make you take a lot of actions where therapy is not managing your actions on the court in life. And as a life coach, I am. And I will not work with a client who can't keep promises to do the things they promise to do. And I'm teaching people to have an ability to make actions happen in their life. Right. And then it goes way further out from there, because I've been building it for over 20 years, and the methodology is something I've developed and the process is something I developed. So I also don't know what other life coaches are doing, because I have my own body of life coaching that I've been developing back in the day when, I don't know what everybody else is doing. I know what the Handel Method teaches, and I know what we do using it.
Since this is the core framework of, I'm sure that we're going to lean into throughout this discussion, can you just give us an overview of the Handel Method that you developed and why that framework has been so useful for you and your clients? It's taught in over 35 universities. I know you've worked with, institutions like MIT, NYU. You've worked with high profile celebrity type clients, and that's not like name dropping. It's just that it seems like you're doing something good to help a lot of different people and a lot of different factions, from universities and businesses to individuals. So, by the way, we should mention the website, and we'll drop the link. InnerU, INNERU, the letter U.coach is where you can sign up and get more information and kind of keep in touch if you're digging what Lauren's sharing today.
Woohoo! Come on, kick your own ass.
So let's, I know there's a lot of nuance to this, I'm sure, but if you just kind of want to give us a little bit of an introduction into your sort of methodology, and then we can kind of dive in deeper from there.
Okay, absolutely. So the best way to do the basics is, and there's a lot more concepts, which is I've developed tools so that you can break into your inner dialogue, break into your, what I'll call your mainframe of how you talk to yourself and think about the world. So this is all a hack to break in. So there's, and it's in 3 sections. Think about it in 3 different sections, which is, first section is the 12 areas of life. So I break life out into 12 different areas, and I ask the individual to write a vision, a dream for each of the 12 areas. So normally people glom their whole life into their career, their love life, and their body. And then they forget, and then they make it all one, and your family, right? So there's this, and then everything is kind of whatever that is, right? And so I stop that action, and I ask you to start to have a vision of your whole life. And so in 12 different areas. So a few things are happening. One, you have a vision, and then I ask you to rate your life against that vision and explain why you gave it that rating. And then I ask you what you think is between you and achieving that dream in your life. So what's happening is, in all the 12 areas, as you write all of this out, you're literally extracting your own inner dialogue, your theories, your beliefs, your parents' shit. Everything's going to come out in those 12 areas of life, and just naturally answering this. And my joke is, I call this process your life story colonoscopy. Okay? It's true. All right.
I love how you would infuse some of the New York attitude into this, yes. Lauren.
I can't help it. And don't forget the snarky part, right? Is that the snarky part?
I'm from the East Coast too, so we're
Where are you
here.
from? Are you
outside of Philadelphia?
Excellent.
Yeah.
Fabulous.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's section 1. And then what's happening is I'm getting you to get your own inner dialogue out of your head, and how you think it's normal to talk about everything or explain why this is your dream, or what you want and don't want, and why you can have it and can't have it. And then because it's laid out in 12 different areas, you can start to really look at yourself and what you've been thinking. There's a before and an after, right? And it's really important that I create a line in the sand for you. Right? Because you can talk about so all of a sudden, the minute you do that, there's a past. And now there's a present. And what I give a shit about, and everything that's about to happen in life coaching, is it's all about designing your future. And people don't sit down and take the time to ever design their future in a way that they comprehensively mean to, which is like driving without knowing where you're going. Right? So I end that habit. And I end, the way the church, your parents, your religion, right, whatever's been ruling you is now put on hold. It's paused. And we're going to talk to you about your inner dialogue and your voice and your dreams, and start to get you to see what mirrors back at you. Okay. So that's section 1. Section 2 is what I consider your operating states, right? Which is, I ask you to take every positive and negative trait of your parents, positive and negative traits of your parents, put 2 lines according to you. Your dad's never stops making jokes, right? And then describe that trait. And then I ask you to go, how does that trait live in you? Are you the same, the opposite, or some variation of that trait. Right? So just like you open your computer and you see Outlook, right? When you wake up in the morning, whether you like it or not, your parents' personality, traits, culture, everything is pumping in you. So I study basically your lineage, your family history, all of your lineage, right? But I call it your epigenetics, right? So there's a study called behavioral epigenetics, and I switch it around and call it spiritual epigenetics, which is your soul's mission in life is to understand where you came from, the lineage of your family, which comes out completely in the personality, and to take over the mainframe, take over the inner dialogue, take over your personality by understanding where you came from so that you can start to direct it and design it through your own inner dialogue. And then the best place to start is your parents. And then I even ask you to do your parents' marriage traits, positive and negative.
Which, by the way, as a father of two young children, this makes me nervous because I'm just thinking, what are they writing? What are they going to be writing in the future about me?
It's very true. As a matter of fact, you might as well just turn it over to them now, right? It will help everyone, right? Because the other thing people do, which I study in the method, is there's, many different ways that we lie. Right? Humans, like there's been studies that every individual human lies 12 times a day, minimally. Right? And so I do a lot of figuring out what your truth is because we have come up with that lying is a virtue. Like if I don't tell you the truth, if I don't tell you something that will hurt you, it's okay. Right? So there's a whole different section that I'm not talking about right now, but in the Handel method, I get you to face all the ways you lie and all the ways your parents lie and all the ways your family has lied, right? And that's not a dirty word. It's just like, blow your nose. You got boogies, wipe your butt, right? There's shit that comes with everything. So so back to that second section is your parents' marriage traits and how they live in you. Positive and negative. And then this also helps dramatically when I coach in corporations, because even a corporation has personality traits based on the founder. The traits happen throughout a company, throughout a family, throughout an individual, and then starting to see it as an operating system. The minute you can see it, you can change it. You really can. That's what I teach. Okay. So then the final section is what I call your haunting memories. So everyone is haunted by whatever you're haunted by. So I ask for all your positive and negative haunting memories as you go through the 12 areas, like just hit them all and make sure you're covering them, because you're haunted in your hauntings. What I discover is that there's lies in your hauntings. There's the way you tell the story that isn't fair necessarily, or it's where you got stuck. And the reason you remember that is because it shaped you, whether you like the shape or not. It's really important to see those haunting memories that don't leave you. And so this homework, the 12 areas, the personality traits combined with your haunting memories, that's the body of work where you're taking over your own narrative and understanding yourself so that you can design your life and get those dreams.
Wow. Okay.
That's
all.
What?
That is intense though. I mean, that's quite, wow.
And I did develop, and so I developed it doing a human study. I worked and taught everything I developed at MIT for 10 years. Every other week I was at MIT. And it was perfect because those students, right, are engineers. And this is engineering. It's starting to understand your personality is engineered. And if you can get it's engineered, you can unengineer it or redirect the whole engineering of yourself in honor of yourself and your lineage and your children. So it's an act of self-love. And really getting your dreams is balls to the wall, right? Like, let's go, right? And then the only other thing I'll say is that according to science, over 80% of our thoughts are negative and fear-based. And so this whole method has you start, especially through dreaming, it starts you on the road to only talking positively to yourself, not like fake, like, oh, affirmations only, even though they're great. I'm not insulting affirmations, but you really have to break into your own inner dialogue to stop talking smack about you, life, others, and everything going on. Like, take down that 80%.
What I'd like to focus on today and get your advice on is navigating transitions, because I think that we need to focus on something for the conversation, because there's too much to unpack if we're just looking at life.
It's true.
And I think that this is very useful because, change is always happening in life. When it comes down to like, okay, you could say the goal is I want to travel, but there's so much more than that, right? Because then it's about, when you have a big goal, like I want to travel the world for a year or something, you have to start questioning all of these other decisions you made in life just by having that goal, right? You're like, do I even want to live here? Should I own this house? Should I rent it out? Should I just like cut ties? What about my job? Is this even the career I want? It's just like, sometimes a change like that can make you confront like a lot of other big questions, even though the dream on the surface might be like simple in nature, right? Like I want to travel the world for a year, but it's bringing up all these other things. I'm fascinated with transitions because I think it's something, no matter how well established your even business, life, whatever, family, like things are going to change. And then you constantly have to kind of make a transition to like another portion of your life, right? In some way. I have a bunch of questions about that, but before we get into that, I do want to ask about the comparison trap. It's like this idea of, if I wake up every day and I'm questioning, am I living my best life? Am I constantly setting myself up to compare myself to myself in like this no-win situation where I'm going to be always striving for this sort of eternal like bliss mode where like, okay, now everything's perfect. Now I'm living my best life. Or like, every day, am I just going to be struggling to like sort of live my best life and never actually get to a place, instead of just being content and finding sort of the peace with what I have? You know what I mean? It's like that balance between like chasing a big dream, but also finding contentment in where you're at.
That sounds like the answer, doesn't it? Like, you can chase life is going forward, not backwards. Right. So you're not going, like, you can dwell on your past. You can think about anything from the past, right? Like that, but that doesn't, there's no cheese down that tunnel, right? Like there really is today. Okay. There really is today. There really only ever is today. Okay. And then the way you dream what you want in your life for the future should be dictating what you do today. So I want to have an amazing body. So I live to 108 minimally and feel awesome every day. Right. So that's a dream. When I mean dream, that's an achievement with my body. And so that dictates how much water I drink today, how I eat all day, and how I enjoy myself, and like what I do regarding food, exercise, water, sleep. So by my dream about my body and my health, I literally just dictated a huge portion of my daily life. Okay. And then if I'm keeping those promises every day in the moment to moment, where I really do drink 3 liters of water, right? Then I literally, as I'm guzzling, I am living to 108. Oh my God, that's hot. Like, did you hear that? All I have to do in the moment to moment of my life is have this dream that tells me what I do today. So I feel like a baller in the moment to moment of life. So that's how I roll it out for people, right? And then if you go, I want to have this much money, Cool. How are you getting it? Like, what's your plan? How does that work for you? Right. So the plan itself tells you what to do today. And if you love your plan, you love your vision, it gives you how to have a happy day. It really does. It changes everything when you really know the bigger picture. And then you can track down your own inner dialogue, right? So a lot of work I do is people have to hear the difference. Like, you have to hear your lower self in order to have a higher self. Like, your lower self says, you're never getting anything you ever want. Oh my God, everybody's done blah, 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 blah. Like, it's just like a mean criminal, right? Like that voice, right? The voice of fear, the voice of doom, the voice of it's like, stay in bed. Hi, right? He's never letting up. It doesn't matter how many times you get out of bed at 6 a.m. That voice is still like, stay in bed, right? So there's a wake up to the dark side of you, right? Yours is yours. Mine is mine. Everyone has one. The more you understand how that voice talks, the more you can like take good care of it, put it down, and, leave it every day. And that is your higher self's job. Like, your intuition, the voice of your higher self is who you want to be. And who you want to be is reacting to the dark side, the lower self.
Okay.
So I think that's really critical in what you're saying too.
Yeah. Okay. So the driving force of the daily actions being the dream and the goal. And so, like, I guess zooming back to that, and then, I mean, if this is going to be the thing that defines like your transition, then this is like a good segue into that conversation. But what is your advice for people in terms of setting the dream or setting the goal? Like, how big should it be? Some people say like, make a big audacious dream, like aim for the stars, you might hit the moon kind of thing. Other people are like, don't do that, because then you're setting yourself up for failure and you're always going to feel like a failure. How do you encourage people to goal set in that way, to set their intentions, to set their dreams in a way that feels tangible and real and not unobtainable, I guess, but also stretches you enough?
Well, first of all, I make sure you do both, right? So, but when I start with a new client, I ask where they want to be in a year, because a year is something you can attain. Right. And you're not gonna, I've worked with people who are 100 pounds overweight. Right. And, you're not exactly going to lose 100 pounds maybe in a year, but you could almost lose 76, right? So you want to have it be something that you can absolutely be proud of and commit to. And it feels like a stretch, but not impossible. And that's the sweet spot of being able to love yourself and choose and make yourself proud every day. Right. So I have people do your dreams every year. Right. So a year is a great clock. Right. And so I like a year, but if you're building a company, like you're actually building a bigger, like a business, 1 year is what you do every year to, what are you getting accomplished this year? But having a huge goal goes much better with an entrepreneur and a vision. So it depends on the circumstances, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So if it's like more personal in nature, you got to find that it's balanced a little bit more. If it's more of like a business in nature, let's say, in that case where because you want to kind of detach from your business in some ways and kind of look at it as this entity. So then you're just like, hey, let's aim for the stars. Maybe we'll
it's
hit the
not
moon
an aim
thing.
for the stars. It's really, so if I'm teaching a person personal integrity, an ability to keep a promise to yourself, and that's the framework. Like every day you keep your own agreements, it builds your power to believe in your imagination and make things happen. Okay. And it really works. The more you trust yourself, the more you can say something, and then what you say happens. Okay. And it's easy to believe in it because you're trustworthy to your own self. So that is something I am building in one's soul. right? And so that's the game changer. And so if you listen to me, I go, I'm living to 108. Now, do I know if I'm living to 108? No. Do I, right? Like, I don't know. But you're like, talk to me. And I'm like, oh, yes, I am. Mm-hmm. So that's why I drink the 3 liters of water with electrolytes, right? Like, so then it becomes fun to be into health. So a long vision really is what you have for a marriage, right? If you're married, you're like, shag 3 to 4 times a week, rest of life. No different than exercising 3 or 4 times a week, rest of life. Certain things require long-term commitments that you never get out of. And so then your own inner dialogue needs to have a seat that you'll hear whatever it's saying. So there really is where the long-term vision is the game changer. Okay. So it's not so much like you can't achieve that as much as it's like, no, drinking water, sleeping, these are major players in your well-being, right? And then making money is something you're never getting out of, right? You're always going to need money, and you're going to need to know how much money you want to live on. Like, there's no avoiding heavy duty conversations. And the quicker you face your truth, the more you can believe in your own dreams.
Yeah. Okay. The personal integrity piece being sort of foundational to all of this. What is your advice for somebody who, whether it's an inner critic or just their mentality every day, where they're struggling with living up to their own expectations, or that maybe they're having a problem? Not that they're lying to themselves all the time, but it's just maybe they set goals and they're not taking action, and they feel like, they get down on themselves because it's like, well, if I say this, but nothing really happens and I'm not really getting anywhere. How do you build that up?
It's Groundhog Day. Life is Groundhog Day.
Great movie.
Oh my God. It's literally, that's it, right? Yeah. Groundhog Day. And when I taught at MIT and the new kids came in, there was like a series of movies I had them watch.
Oh yeah.
To wake them up. And one of them was always Groundhog Day.
What were the other ones?
Defending Your Life was my other all-time favorite movie on earth. That is still oh my God. It's a comedy, with Albert Brooks, and he's dead. And it's like the reincarnation theory and then it's I believe that movie, right? Might be as close as we're getting to where do we go after this, right? And I'm like, I think that movie covers it. In which case you better do better here, huh? Right? It like literally kicks your ass to make sure you don't chicken out of taking all the risks that there are to take while you're alive. Yeah. And then the other one that's really pretty great is what the bleep do we know anyway? Which is all about how we have all our neural pathways kind of organized in some screwy ways. So in going back to the concept Groundhog Day, there is no lower self voice that isn't, even if you're keeping all your promises, like everything you wish you were doing for the day, your voice will never shut up until you teach it to shut up. Okay. And so I have a promise. No kidding, guys. I do all my own work, right? So I have a list of promises that I have to keep, which are to keep my lower self, to have a cup of shut the fuck up. Okay. And that list is, I'm vigilant about it. And I owe someone $1 if I dwell on any of my negative inner dialogues that I know loop. So I have rules that I keep that are like a sport to me, and I'm playing it, and I don't take it personally that I'm human and my voice never leaves me alone. Okay. And then I have the promises that I'm making, which is I exercise, I drink water, I have a bedtime, I shag, like all the things I want to be doing every day to be thriving are my personal integrity promises. And one of the lines I say to anyone listening is you are about 3 promises away from changing your whole life. It's not even like we pretend it's so complex. Yeah, no, go for a walk every day when you wake up. First thing you do. Yes, I mean, wake up earlier. Yes, it's true. You do that, listen to some, make a good playlist and go have fun being alive. And then we'll come back and make the next good promise, right? So there's a gradient to evolving yourself and loving yourself. And it's usually 3 to 5 promises away from being a total state change.
Wow. Okay. So can you give us a real world example of what those promises might look like, just so people can process that a little bit?
Exercise. I'm sorry, everyone. Exercise is really the number one of every number one. And I'm not a doctor. I'm just telling you it's true when you're proud of moving your body, and your endorphins. So when I was going through a really hard time in my life, I needed to exercise first thing in the morning, 2 hours a day. And and I just took a walk and had a playlist. And really, when I was getting divorced, I was crying, right? And I had a playlist. I was like, the day I'm not crying over this playlist anymore is when I've processed the pain and the sadness. So with all my clients, depending on what's going on in their life, there's a routine that is a game changer. And if you're not exercising, working out hard. I didn't say work out hard. I didn't say exercise. I said, go for a walk, right? Does that sound hard, anyone? It better not. Okay, cool. So what can you tolerate that will make you happy? That would be fun. Even if you just dance, I make people move first things first, right? Especially if they're dealing with deep depression. I will can we get a 10-minute just boogie and send me the video?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So applying some of these principles to making a transition from one aspect of life to another, which, again, it's impossible to unpack this for every individual situation. But since you have these great frameworks, I think I would just love to hear your advice on navigating that portion of your life, which I think that comes in various forms, right? Some transitions are in your face and immediate. If you quit a job, one day you had this career and the next day you don't. But then there might be the sort of months in between where you're trying to figure out what to do next, or going through the divorce is a great example of processing and okay, who am I after this? Now I'm transitioning from being married to this person for, so long to now living this different kind of life. What's your best advice for kind of working through that process? Whether it's I think one thing when I was thinking about this, I'm how can we boil this down and put words to this? Cause it's so complicated. And the one thing that kept coming up was kind of getting unstuck, because I feel what can happen in transitional phases in life is that we know we're kind of trying to move towards this next thing, but sometimes we don't know what that is. So it's the seeking, the searching, kind of giving ourselves permission for that. And then, getting stuck too in various stages once we kind of figure out where we want to go, those are 2 separate things, right? Because sometimes we don't know where we want to go. Cause there's,
I never buy that. I don't like that. I don't like that. I would I don't know where I want to go is something I won't tolerate. I'll take an answer and you'll be wrong. Or you'll change your mind.
Okay,
everyone can come. I don't vague and
pick something, dude, and roll with it, and then change it next week, but pick it. Okay.
Even if you're I want to be celibate. Cool. For how long? After I'm celibate, then I'll decide when my love light comes back on, right? So I was I am not going to date or be interested in love until I miss it. I have no idea how long that will take, right? So then I put time, because time is going nowhere, and time, we all are headed we keep time for obvious reasons. We're going to drop dead. And so this life is over when time says so. So in using time as your bitch rather than your its bitch, you will call time slots. You will dictate to time. And then if you're wrong, you're wrong, right? So I want to get a job in 6 weeks. Okay, great. What are you going to do all day in time to make sure you get a job in the next 6 weeks? What are you going to think? How are you going to act? What are you going to do? Right? And so I help people figure out what they're going to think, what they're going to act, and what they're going to do. Right? And thinking is an action. So knowing what you're going to think, right? So all of these things get locked in time, and you call and you make the commitment. Even if you wake up in 3 days and go, that sucks. I don't want to feel this anymore. I don't like this idea. I don't like this career idea anymore. Cool. All right. I even help people when they're wondering if they should have a child, right? And they can't make a big decision. I go, great. So here are these are your 3 options, right? Find someone who has kids, raise theirs, have your own baby, cool, or I don't want any of it. Great. Those are your 3 options. And then if I have a person who will actually do their homework and follow instructions, I go every morning by 10 o'clock, you send me today's answer. Like you're going to try that on for a day. So we're going to do 30 days of what'd you pick for 30 days? And let's split it out. And have you, so again, we're developing your higher self, making a choice, and then living in how it feels and what it thought about all day. Okay? Rather than I can't make a decision. That sounds like a decision, right? I can't make a decision is a decision.
Right, right. That's great. Thank you. That makes a ton of sense. And I like the idea of, like when you used the celibate example, that was interesting because the outcome, in that case, it wasn't necessarily time-based, but it was like until it feels right, which is a time, but you don't know what the time is. Right. And then there's that concept, kind of like like I'm going to try this until like I feel like I'm ready for, and that kind of like it gives you the power of making a decision. But
that's right. But
then you're also, you have an openness to it, I guess.
Celibate is a decision.
Yeah. I mean, just in that example.
Like,
but I mean,
so celibate was a decision I made. Like I'm celibate until I actually want to love a man again. Right. I didn't want to give up on love and men. And so, right. And everything was sad. So I had to wait till I cried it out, let it out. And I knew I would love again. I knew I would believe in love and men and all things. Right. So I was happy to go through the hard part inside of this construct, right? And so I'm constantly creating constructs for a person to engage in time, in their own narrative. So, another good answer for everyone, if you're in a transition, this one's really fun, not fun, but helpful fun.
Okay.
So it really helps to go, that was Lauren 1.0. And now I'm building Lauren 2.0.
Okay. Yeah. You're upgrading the software, the operating
That's
software.
Exactly right. And so then in 1.0, I used to do this. I had all of these traits or things I did that didn't make me happy in 1.0. And so now, based on knowing this 2.0, I can say, this is my future in 2.0. Okay. And so that's a good way to go. I'm in a transition, and transition is whatever 1.0, why you left or what happened. So you can own it as the past and let it go. And 2.0 is what you're creating. Always have what you're creating.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And then the other example with the trying it on for 30 days, I think is a great approach too. There are different approaches you can take is what I'm hearing. But they all involve making some kind of decision and going for it, essentially, with the sort of caveat of like, hey, doesn't mean you have to keep this decision forever. You can.
Oh, you're the ruler, right? Yeah. So the line I use is you're either being a weather reporter where you're just reporting on how you feel and what you think all day, or you're being the author, which is directing the weather, right? Like you're creating it and directing it. Yes, there's still weather, which you didn't expect, but you know where you're focusing on what you believe is the right direction. And then you're in a process of truly learning, right? No one really understands that the word learning means you don't know, right? Like, and no humans like not to know the answer. And so we suffer because we get things wrong. We suffer because we want to know it. We only want to have the right answers now. Right. And so that's the opposite. That is the lower self back yammering on to you versus your higher self, which is really like, what is my life for? What is my purpose? What do I care about the most today? And then what am I living into the future?
There's been a rise in depression, mental health awareness, thankfully, but suicide, depression, these things. What do you think is the number one culprit for this? I don't want to call it a trend because it's not. Hopefully it's not a trend, but, because there are systemic things around some of this stuff too, that's out of our hands in some ways, I think. A specific example of that might be, social media platforms and their addictive nature, which is, you could say, well, we have all the power, but they have billions of dollars and some of the smartest people in the world working to get you addicted to these platforms. These are some of the external things that are causing depression and things like that. I mean, what are some of the things that you see that, like, exercise is one example where you said, this is something you can do that, like, really, I call it a domino decision. It it knocks over a whole bunch of other things and makes a lot of other things just better just by doing that one thing.
Yes.
Is there anything else like that you can share, or just, I just want to get your thoughts around sort of like it feels like there's a lot of discontent and unhappiness in society now. People feel disconnected, even though we're more connected than ever. Like, you've been doing this for a long time. What's your take on, like, kind of where we're at today?
I don't notice the difference you're describing when I'm working with an individual right. It doesn't, the individual is in whatever trap they're in. And whatever addiction, like, everyone has their vices of how they check out and aren't connected in their own life. And that's actually not different than it was 50 years ago. Okay. And, now social media or your phone is, like you're having your cocktail while you're scrolling. Okay. Right. Like, you're just like, it used to be the television and watching a game and having a cocktail and checking out from your family. Right. Like, so the way we check out is always taking us away from dealing with what's most important to ourselves. And we will always have ways to check out. And the more you check out, the more you're listening to the voice in your head. Like it's always, to me, the same of a person has to figure out what their soul is up to and what you want to fulfill on and how your relationships are and where your friendships, what's most important to you in this area. So the more a person dreams, the more they can take actions connected to their dreams, the more they'll be happy. So when some people are obsessed with something in their life and they seem happier, I don't know if they are. You'd have to listen to their inner dialogue, and then you'd have to watch what's happening behind closed doors. And so behind closed doors and in the head is still the real truth. And each individual will always have the outer world that can explain why they're competing with the Joneses. They're gonna, like, it's really not that different. No matter, it's really not to me. In all my years, I just now have to add social phone, like the phone to the next to sex addicts, next to porn, next to drugs, it's like, oh, the camp got bigger. Okay. Of vices. That's my truth about it. Right. And then watching all the news and watching and thinking, right. It's people suffer from not taking care of their own lives the way they wish they would.
How do you encourage people to act in spite of their fears? Like they're going to have these goals and then they're going to come up against something that's going to be scary. It's going to be, I could use like a metaphor, say like when you're building a business, you can do all the things, like you could make the website and you can do all the things that are like sort of like building the business. But, you know, then you get to the point where like, all right, I actually have to make a phone call and sell something to somebody. And then like, oh no, like I'm petrified, you know, because you could do all the small things and feel like you're getting towards the goal without actually doing the things that are going to move the needle. So what do
That's
you,
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I teach people promises and consequences of your own making. Like, so, you know, for example, I didn't want to meditate. I just thought I needed to meditate and I should meditate, and everybody else on earth meditates. What the hell's wrong with me?
I think a lot of people actually feel like, just like you described, which is hilarious.
What's wrong with me? I don't
We
care.
can't sit still. We're from the East Coast. It's too hard.
Come on, right? So in order to make sure I meditated every day, twice a day, I didn't get coffee in the morning till I meditated. Okay. And then I didn't get any Netflix or any kind of social nothing until I meditated. And so that made it very easy to meditate twice a day, because I definitely was getting my coffee and I definitely was going to want my social media, right? So I teach people to use their vices for good. I really do reverse the vice paradigm, which is get your cookie, right? No shit. It's actually a lot of fun because it uses, all of a sudden your lower self is working for the team.
Yeah. So it's kind of like dangling the carrot, like giving yourself a reward on the other side.
Absolutely.
Of like a fear-based action.
It's more taking something away that you're used to, that is the cookie, right? So it's like you don't get your dessert child unless you finished your meal. And so they finish their meal to get to the dessert, right? Or they don't get the dessert and they have to sit and stare at their meal. And then that's okay. They have power of choice. So that's how I wire, like I help your neuro pathways go in the right direction.
In terms of manifesting, which is a word that can be a dirty word for some people, they kind of see that concept as like, well, I can't just sit around thinking about money and it's going to show up. There's like that camp, and then and you're like, yeah, that's right. And I have a feeling that's where you're going to go with this. But can you share your philosophy on the value of manifesting? I'm using air quotes, whatever that means to you listening. Inherent in setting a dream and working to achieve that, which is, you know, foundational to what you teach. There is going to be this must be baked in, right? Like manifesting
Absolutely.
in some ways has to be baked in.
It is.
Can you talk about that?
Yes. Well, first of all, I coined a phrase that recently got released by Questlove Amir on Trevor Noah's show, which is
one of your clients, Questlove, right? He was one of your former clients. Yeah. Seems like a great guy. I got his book back there somewhere. Yeah, he's got a great book.
He is even better. He is the biggest heart ever. Anyway, so you can be manifesting or manifucking yourself. Manifucking was the word. And so that means it works both ways, right? So what's happening is if you take away the word manifesting and put in the word using your imagination, you are always imagining at all times. Your inner dialogue is constantly yammering towards what you either want or fear of what you don't want. Fear of what you don't want, I call manifucking yourself. Fear of wanting what you do want is manifesting. And that's it. It's just it's a verb. So your imagination thinking about what you do want is dreaming, is visualizing, is absolutely conjuring a a true desire into how would it play out? What would it be? Whether it's a car, whether it's a company, whether it's a lover, whether it's an apartment, like whether it's a parking spot, right? Like whatever it is that you're looking for, you should imagine finding it and believing in it. Okay. And then you should always be listening to your own inner dialogue, hearing if you're doing it or not, or what you are saying to yourself, because you're always talking to yourself and you're either manifesting or manifucking. And if you just go right there, that's all you should wonder about. Now, humans, hello everyone, we live in physical reality. There is no matter how much your imagination is working, it only works as good as what you do on the court, right? So there is no manifest and a man's going to ring your doorbell. Okay. You really do need to be on the apps. Okay. Swiping along, right? So there's reality. And so all your imagination and all your thoughts, so there's spiritual integrity, which are your thoughts having integrity. There's emotional integrity, which is you experiencing and feeling in integrity. And then there's physical integrity, which is what you're doing. So there's what you're doing, there's how you're feeling, and it deals with how you're acting and thinking. Okay. And so I get people to really understand that your imagination leads to what's happening on Earth.
Yeah, I like the duality there of manifesting and manifucking, as you said.
Yes. It's happening. And it has, whether you believe in manifesting or believe in manifucking, you're doing it now anyway. You're thinking about what you want today, and you're either defending yourself like you belong on a diet and you want to be healthy, but you're being mad at your husband and you're thinking about how you deserve a cookie for dealing with him, right? Like that's your lower self. That's manifuckery. Right. And if you really want to look like that and to feel like that, you better be manifesting an apple, right? They're delicious. You can even bake one. Okay. You get it. So it's like you can see what you're thinking about by the actions you're taking.
Okay. Yeah.
Ba-dum-bum.
Okay. Intuition was another thing I wanted to pick your brain on, because sometimes it's there and it's just hard to listen to. The business context is one example where your practical brain might be looking at sort of like numbers and KPIs and, the market research you did or whatever the case is. And, there are like core data sets that can back up an argument or support it or not support it, let's say. But then you might have this feeling in your stomach like, but I still feel like this is something I should test out or go, you know what I mean? And it's just like, so this is just like the practical mind versus, and again, it should be versus, I guess, because they're two useful things. And maybe you can speak to this in your own life, leaning into your intuition versus listening to the practical mind, let's call it.
So I demolish what you just said by putting in a different construct. The construct I put in for what you just were talking about is, hey, everyone, you have a head, you have a heart, and you have a hoo-ha. And they're like totally different agendas. Actually, sometimes they overlap, but think of them more as siblings. You have a head, you have a heart, you have a hoo-ha. When the hoo-ha is not talking about attraction and sex in a relationship, consider it the cool factor, what you're into, what you find sexy and hot, right? And so instead of making a decision and looking at life through this competitive 100%, like what is your head, like who's arguing in there? Think of life itself as 300%. Like your head gets 100% of a vote, your heart gets 100% of a vote, and your hoo-ha, which is usually a quick swing vote, gets 100% of the vote too. Okay. And so then you ask yourself the question, should you call this person? Your head says what? Your heart says what? And your hoo-ha says what? You understand? So all of a sudden you're getting your intuition, right? Which is there's an intelligence. And then I really do break out in my courses in Inner You. Hey, that was a plug. In Inner You, what your head most cares about, which is the bank, the money, the religion, like things that are structured. Your heart your heart is where your intuition really lives. But your head keeps your heart in check a little, like, hey, don't give it all away. But your heart needs to always weigh in separate from your head and separate from your hoo-ha, right? So your hoo-ha is like, he's hot. Your heart's like, he has 2 phones. Why does he have 2 phones? That doesn't seem right. And your head's like, but did you see his car? So then the head and the hoo-ha gang up on the heart and tell it to shut up. He's probably a great guy, very busy. And your heart was screaming, he's a cheater, right? So you have to hear all the voices weigh in before you can make a true decision that is from your higher self. That's how I structure exactly what you just did. And it works every time. Right? Sit down for a second, anyone who's trying to make a decision, and say, what does my head say? What does my heart say? What does my hoo-ha say? Yeah. And you'd be shocked. They have consciousness.
Okay. All right. You gave us a lot here today. I really appreciate your time. Do you have of course, a call to action in terms of to find more about your work? We'll link up to it, as you mentioned, inneryou.coach. You want to share a little bit more about like what people can get there, how they can work with you? I think it might be nice to, if you want to leave people with like a challenge or just some food for thought coming out of this, I always find some elegance and simplicity. We had so much going on, so much value today. But maybe coming out of this, you can think of one sort of call to action for people. Okay,
I am happy to.
Perfect.
You want the call to action first?
Well, that's up to you. The floor is yours.
The call to action is, I swear if you've made it to the end of this, like there is a screaming promise that wants to be kept by your higher self. It is screaming. Oh, it's screaming. Oh, it's screaming. It's like, stop doing this or do that. Like something screaming that if you actually took just one promise, one, and you tell somebody, and you don't tell the person who's going to excuse it. You tell, like I recommend if you have a kid, you tell your child, right? I promise to go to bed I promise I'll be phone off, not with me, out of the room, 11 p.m., right? Like one awesome promise and keep it for 1 month. Just keep it for 1 month.
That's beautiful.
That's it. That's Perfect. The challenge.
I love it.
Perfect. If you ever want to hire one of my coaches, we have it's a tier, right? So I am the most expensive one going, but that's okay. I'm very good. But I trained everybody. And then it's really and I have coaches that are in corporations and work with individuals. And it goes all the way down to, very cheap, just new coaches that just came on that are fantastic. And it takes 2 years to get trained to become a coach with me. So with the Handel Method. So hire us if you want to do individual work. But if you actually want to get the bargain of a century, it really is buy one of my Inner Yous. I have 3 Inner You courses. Inner You Life, which is the basic one I've been talking about here. I have Inner You Love, which is an entire program just on dealing with your love life and your history of love, because I profoundly care about people being in love and happy in their love lives, which saves the children too. Okay, cool. And then Inner You Career. And then once you buy one of those programs, which is $500 to buy the program, you basically can have access to, I'm teaching all year round, 2 courses every month, all year round. And then you get buddies and there's a community. And once you buy it, you're in. So it's the best deal I have and then it's a beautiful community because you get an integrity buddy where you get to practice doing everything for your life and designing your life. And you don't have to like practice it on your husband. You can practice it with someone in the group.
Yeah,
right.
okay.
So you're
speaking the same language. So it's,
it's moving. It's really moving. And it's one of my favorite classes I teach all year round.
Yeah. Wow. You've made a difference in a lot of people's lives. How does it feel when you look back on kind of like the work you've done and where you're at now? Like, how does that make you feel?
Really, honestly, I don't ride on any laurels. I just want to reach millions of people. I just want to keep going forward. So it makes me feel like I need to hurry on how many people get to shift their lives. Right. And I have so much proof that it works that it just makes me want to like, keep going. Right.
Yeah. That's awesome. Thank you. I hope we can do this in person again the next time. Plenty more to unpack, I think, you know.
I really have a lot of content.
I love it. Well, I mean, super useful stuff. And we just really appreciate your time. We'll link up to everything in the show notes that was mentioned. And thank you again.
Thank you.
There you go. Thanks once again to Lauren Zander for stopping by the show. Do you have a screaming promise? Like she mentioned at the end, is there something trying to break its way through? What are you going to do with it? I invite you to get in touch and let me know if you come out of this one with some kind of a shift or perhaps a big decision. Who knows? You can always drop me a line, jason@zerototravel.com, or just say hi. And if you want to keep in touch further, we have a free newsletter over at zerototravel.com/newsletter. I know, very original URL, right? But I send that out once a week and you can sign up over there. Before I let you go, I got a wonderful quote for you. But first, I have to give a shout out to somebody in this community. Elizabeth, her story here really reminded me of one of the number one principles of building a life of travel, or at least, getting you in the right direction towards a big trip, if that's something you're working towards. So let me just read a snippet of her email here. She said, Jason, Happy New Year. Wanted to shoot you an email to share some upcoming travel plans that my husband Evan and I have been scheming. The short of it, we had such an incredible time on our honeymoon in Thailand last April that we decided to take the plunge and start planning for a whole year of living abroad, which will kick off this upcoming spring. I have a remote job and we don't have kids or pets yet, so we certainly don't have any excuse to not do it. She goes on to say, hope this brings a smile to your face. Thanks for all you do. Zero to Travel is definitely one of my favorite podcast discovery of last year. Cheers, Elizabeth. And first of all, thanks, Elizabeth, for being a listener here. And I'm just so excited for you. She also sent me pictures of her handwritten journal where her and her husband were brainstorming this vision they had for travel. And anytime you put a pen to paper, magical things can happen. I swear by it. I encourage anybody to do that. And, her story did remind me of this principle behind adding more travel into your life. Small trips lead to big trips. Small trips lead to big trips. It's that simple. I've heard this time and again after, hundreds, over 1,000 interviews probably at this point that I've done on podcasts. And I've heard this time and again as one of the common threads that has emerged is if you can't do the big thing, or maybe there's a big thing you're scared to do, if you start taking the small steps, that can lead to the big things. So if you can't take the big trip now, take a small one. Take what you can get, build some momentum, and see where it leads you. I encourage you to do that. Okay, I'm going to leave you with this quote. This was a great reminder for me. It popped up in our Wisdom of the East paper tear-off calendar that I get every year. It's like a $10 calendar. I love it. And this one's from June J. Muth, who said, quote, "It is easy to believe that we are each waves and forget we are also the ocean." Thanks for listening, and I'll see you next time. Peace and love to you and yours. Cheers.
This podcast has been brought to you by zerototravel.com. Ideas and advice to make your travel dreams a reality.